This is Moments of Truth, the webcast with and for customer success professionals. I'm Andrew Marks, co-founder of Success Hacker. Today, I am joined by Maranda Dziekonski, Vice President of Customer Success and People Operations at Swiftly. Maranda, welcome to the program. Love having you. Love talking with you as usual. Thanks for making time for me today. Great to see you as always. You want to give people who are not familiar with you, I don't know who wouldn't be familiar with you, but for those people who aren't familiar with you, a little background and what you do in your company?
Yeah, so as you said, I'm Maranda Dziekonski. I am the Vice President of Customer Success and People Operations at Swiftly. So I own the people operations side, everything from office management to the human resources component. And then most importantly, customer success. So all things post-sale implementation and onboarding and renewals and all of that fun stuff that happens in between.
Last time we spoke, we were just getting into the whole shelter-in-place situation due to COVID, right?
Yeah.
We're now a good 6 months in, a time frame that many people feel is what it kind of takes to get used to working from home. I know it took me 6 months. I mean, I've been doing this for 6 or 7 years now, but it takes people a good 6 months to kind of figure out their work from home, the place and their space and getting used to it and getting disciplined on it. I'd love to get your take on what you think is going to happen from a workplace perspective with customer success teams for the rest of 2020 and moving into 2021 and beyond.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. So I remember when we spoke back in March, April timeframe, we were talking about, leading with empathy and giving your customers a little bit of space, maybe like pulling back on marketing and pulling back on, selling and let them figure out their new norm. So now I think that we've all kind of figured out a little bit about what our new norm is and what our day-to-day is going to be like. And I think another thing is we all still know there's a lot of unknowns, but what I am seeing, at least for this year and a good portion of next year, many companies, the trend is will still be remote. So folks are still going to remain in the current setup they're in and possibly not going into the office. And this is a trend that we're seeing across the board. At least here in Silicon Valley, and I think beyond as well. Some larger companies are even saying they're, going to get rid of their offices. And I'm seeing that as a trend too, to where it's like, we've learned that we now can do this, we can do this well. So folks are starting to go down the path of, do we need an office? So yeah, I mean, for customer success in general, I think the rest of the year is probably going to look more of like what it looks like today. But I think there are a few things that we should talk about what are you doing as a manager of your customer success team or a vice president of your team to make sure you're setting the teams up for success for this year and next year. How have you changed your communication styles? And if you haven't changed your communication style, how should you change it? How are you documenting best practices, ROI, with best practices with your team and ROI for your customers? Right. So there are a few things that maybe we could discuss that if the VP or head of this team is not doing it already, they should probably start thinking about this if they are one of those folks that are going to be remote for the long time.
So 100% agree with you on the kind of this becoming the new normal. I was reading, I think it was in Forbes a few months ago, there was a survey done by 1,000 SaaS CEOs, and I think 65 or 70% of them said that they have no intention of renewing their leases.
Yeah.
And even outside of technology, I was reading that big financial companies that are based in New York, JP Morgan Chase and HSBC and some of these other big financial services companies have talked about closing their offices in the city and opening up smaller, more regional centers where people can do a do like a desk share type of situation.
Yeah, I was reading an article with, I think it was Fast Company, that said pre-pandemic, there was about 25 to 30% of folks that worked from home multiple days a week. Post-pandemic, the estimates are saying 1 in 3 companies will stay 100% remote. So, still there is this 66% that will probably go back to the office, or they don't have that ability to be remote.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, 33% of all companies they're predicting will stay remote 100% of the time. So,
And the we're in a very tech heavy economy, right? Whether people want to accept that or not, we've moved into technology and knowledge working as being a primary source of income for a lot of people, and those companies are of course, being in tech or being related to tech, are much more likely to embrace technology for their workforce, and this situation has forced the work from home,
absolutely.
right? So, I mean, even my wife is in HR for retail, and she was going into the office all the time because kind of that was the way they did things. Now, even though they've now opened up the retail stores, but she's been at Bed Bath and Beyond for like 25 years.
Yeah.
And this is the first time she's actually been able to work from home, even though we used to talk about it, even though it used to question why she would go into San Francisco to spend all day on phone calls. It's like, well,
Absolutely.
what's the point?
There's been a huge mindset change across, I think, at least from what I'm seeing. Folks who were very anti work from home, they thought everybody needed to be in the same office to be productive or, provide value in the day to day. They're seeing that it is possible now to, you know, have a team that's remote and still get everything done. I do want to call out, though, that it has been a shift. It's a shift for people. It's a shift for managers.
Yeah.
So,
So what are
uh,
the things that was going to be my next question? What are the things that you recommend or that you're doing to set your team up for success?
yeah. So first thing I would say managers should do is take a look at your customer success team. Look at their goals. Look at the skill sets that are required to be successful, not just as a customer success manager, but as a remote team member. And then do an assessment with your team member and say, okay, these are the 10 things that will set you up for success here at company B or company, whatever, at Bob's Widgets. These are the 10 things that will set you up for success as a remote team member. Let's do an assessment on where you are on these skill sets and figure out what skill sets we're missing. Also,
And before you get on to the next one, that's something I think that companies should have been doing anyways, because in the grand scheme of things, the majority of your customer success was being delivered remotely anyways, except for the top tier customers to begin with, right?
well, ish, right?
Yeah.
If you think about it, almost every company I've worked for before now, we did have the flexibility to work remote, but never in this capacity, right? We all sat at desks together,
Right.
and if you're not familiar with the setup in a startup, it's generally like you're sitting on top of each
It's
other,
a
desks.
bullpen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And you could look over at your coworker and say, hey, what do you think about this? Or, oh, I got this problem. I'm not quite sure how to approach it. So those are the skill sets I'm talking about that it's hard to replicate when you're sitting alone in
Yeah.
this room without someone just to kind of look over at and say, oh, I just got this email from this customer. This doesn't sound good. How do I approach this? Right. So how do you set your team up for success and provide them with the venue and the avenue to still have that dialogue, to still feel that connection with their team, to still, learn.
Yeah.
Think about how much you learn just by sitting in a room with your coworkers on a day to day. How do you replicate that at your company if that's no longer going to happen?
Yeah.
Where do you store resources? I know in startups, at least, a lot of startups don't have processes documented.
No.
It's all head knowledge. A lot of startups don't have formal training, and if they do, they definitely never thought about completely, training somebody in a remote capacity to bring them into your company. How do you train your team when a new product is launched, right? All of these things that we probably took for granted as we sat together every day, we
Right.
now need to think through and make sure it's documented, make sure, that we're able to build this all out for remote. It's a completely different, while what you've already created may work, I think for the most part, a lot of us have to rethink everything.
And it's more than just throwing Microsoft Teams or Slack at people. It's coming up with some process, some direction. Here's how you should use it. Here's how you should direct it. It's also, because with the whole remote thing, I think it's important that people are connecting together on a regular basis. At the beginning of the shelter in place, we were doing a weekly happy hour just to get people together and talking.
I really
Um,
liked those. Those were fun.
yeah, they were. It was hurting my liver. Uh, so what other things that based on your experience do you think you need to think about as a leader or even just an individual CSM to ask your leadership, hey, we should be doing X, Y, or Z in order to be as effective as possible with this new normal.
Yeah, so let me just quickly cover as a manager. If you are someone that previously managed by being able to see your team and understand that they were being productive, that's out the window.
Right.
Um, if you were someone that set your goals with your team with there being a lot of dependencies on you all being together, that's kind of out the window. So as a manager, you need to assess everything that you're doing, right? And starting with goal setting and accountability. Do the goals, if I use OKRs, do they transfer well remotely? Are you taking into account the learning style of your team members? So you may have folks that this is a dream for them. Maybe you have team members who are like, oh my God, finally, I don't have to go to work every day and be around people. I can just be around myself.
Right.
That's great. This is perfect for them. But then you have team members who this is like their worst nightmare. So make sure you're taking that into account when you're thinking through how you're setting them up for success. What do their goals look like? What does accountability look like? How do you feed that need that they may have to have that connection with a team or a company? Think about your communication. Things don't translate well or translate the same in writing sometimes as they do verbally. So take extra care about how you're messaging things in Slack. Make sure that the tone can be transferred through because Slack usage, while it was high while we were sitting in the office together, it is off the charts now. We sit in Slack and Zoom
Yeah.
meetings all day. And I will go as far as to say, oh, go ahead. I'm
Well,
sorry.
your written communication lacks. You say it lacks tone. It very much. It's content without the context,
Yeah,
right? And it's dangerous. And it's something that we talk about with when we train we train CSMs. Like if you got a hot customer and it's clear that customer is screaming at you via email, you need to pick up the phone and call them. Even though
100%.
that's probably not the first thing that you're thinking of, you need to understand how they really feel. It will help diffuse the situation, but it's the same
Yeah.
thing internally.
Yeah. Empathy just doesn't translate super well in a Slack message.
No, not at all.
And another thing that managers should do is look at your meeting cadence. I try to put the hat of team members on, and there's nothing that can ease the soul more than getting FaceTime with folks. If you have team members who have a lot on their plate, they're stressed, and then you're adding on this extra layer of COVID and having to work at home, Just be super mindful about the sensitivity around everything and put on more meetings. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but just more FaceTime touch points, like doing a stand up and having team meetings and having happy hours and like I said, FaceTime, soothes the soul. It helps quiet the anxieties that your team may be having. um, One more thing that I'll just throw out there is, beyond everything, beyond, goal setting, accountability, meetings, communication, writing out best practices, all of that stuff, it's learning how to manage a team that you won't see face to face. Micromanagers in this environment will fail. You cannot be a micromanager and succeed in
Can you
this type of
imagine? You
environment.
lose your mind. I mean,
Absolutely.
you know,
You'll lose your mind and you'll lose your team.
yes, very much so.
It's, stress is already high, and there's so much uncertainty. So micromanagers will fail. So if you are a micromanager, and you have to admit that to yourself, all right, you need to figure out a new way to manage.
Something that I 100% agree with you. If you are a micromanager, regardless of the pandemic,
Right.
you need to adjust anyways, because especially at the level that we're hiring people, you're not, most companies have enough of a body of CSMs that are well into their career, right? You're paying these people 89 to 100 grand a year.
Exactly.
You should be hiring people that you can rely on to do the job that they need to do, and you want them to. You want people to think for themselves. That's part of this job. You can't have somebody always second guessing what their micromanaging manager would say or do, because you got to empower these folks, right? Which is the opposite of micromanagement.
And if you think about where micromanaging comes from, it generally comes from a place of insecurity within oneself, or not knowing what's going on, or not feeling like you have your team in control to where they're moving in the right direction, right? So if you think about the true root cause of micromanagement, it's easy to fix, right?
Yeah,
You set up your OKRs, your objectives, key results, you have a regular cadence of meeting, you hold people accountable,
yeah,
and you will have team members that won't deliver. And the important thing is you hold them accountable.
yeah,
And
exactly.
that really kind of helps solve for that micromanaging, as long as you have those things in your check, 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 right?
Yeah, for sure.
And just making sure you communicate with your team member expectations around check-ins and in communications, and have them do that, right?
And there's a way, and there's another kind of bridge that you can, if you're a micromanager, that you can use. I mean, we're huge fans of the concept of, everybody talks about trailing indicators, things like NPS and customer
Yeah.
sat and churn and expansion and things like that. We think that, yeah, well, of course, those are table stakes when it comes to metrics that we're going to be looking at as a customer success organization and as a company in general. But let's start focusing on the leading indicators, the things that indicate that our customers are moving closer to their milestones, moving closer to their desired outcome. And so ensuring that the right people are doing the right things in the right ways at the right times, right?
Yes.
So is there some way we can meter that our CSM are going through the steps that we want them to go through in the time that we want them to go through, in order to manufacture success for our customers? That's kind of a nice bridge for those that can't kind of let go of that micromanagement thing. You can, I mean, there's a lot to be said about leveraging leading indicators to, to manage your team and manage your business, right?
Yeah.
Because the more we can, and you've got some background in manufacturing, right?
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
The more that we can manufacture success for our customer, right? Create a predictable, repeatable approach. Well, if we want to create a predictable, repeatable approach, then we need to be able to monitor that predictable, repeatable approach.
100%. I mean, the success of your team is the success of your customer, right? I
Exactly.
mean, if you
Yeah.
don't have a team that feels empowered and engaged and supported, your customers will feel that from their account manager, their CSM. So agree with you completely. I've often used it's, when onboarding a new team member, I'll just use this as an example. There's so many correlations between onboarding a new team member and onboarding a new customer. It's very like one to one, right? If you
Yeah.
think about it, I've talked about this before, but everything from recruiting in your new team member, it's part of the experience, the same as like the sales cycle,
Yeah.
getting the new customer in the pipeline, and then you get them there and you close the deal. It doesn't stop there, right?
It's just beginning.
Exactly. And, I've been thinking about this a lot with COVID, and I would love if whoever is listening to this, if you can comment on this and tell me, what have you seen done well with onboarding 100% remote? Because we used to, while we've always had some remote team members, we would fly people out to San Francisco to have them stay with us for multiple weeks to onboard. So this is our first time ever onboarding somebody 100% remote. And honestly, it was my first time. I've recently hired someone, my first time hiring somebody without ever meeting them face to face. I did everything over Zoom, and it's a very different world.
Yeah, very
So,
much.
and I think we're going to see more of that in 2021. I don't, I think the thing I keep hearing people say is, ooh, 2020, I can't wait for 2020 to be over.
Yeah.
Like, I hear you. I can't wait for 2020 to be over either.
Yeah.
But I don't think on December 31st, when that clock strikes midnight and January 1 of 2021 is here, that we're going to just see things miraculously change. I think,
Not at all.
we're kind of looking at, maybe some things will change, but we're kind of looking at our reality for a while, right? So, yeah, it's
I
a
think
little.
you're being. I think you're being. I think you're being too bullish. I think this is our reality. I think it. I think. I personally, I don't see things really opening up until late 2021, right? And
Yeah,
it's not just what the government wants to do or what business wants to do. It's what people are comfortable
yeah,
doing, right?
absolutely.
And my wife and I have talked about how if and my daughter goes to a charter school, so we don't, we're not part of I mean, we're part of, but not really part of the school district here. But the charter school has said if we get to a point where we open up our campus, it's going to be a choice of the parents to decide whether or not you want to send your kids back. Now, we are fortunate in that we both can work from home, so we can make her school, her school time work from home work for
Yeah,
us. And I know that's not always available to every parent, and I also like the fact that because we can do that, what that does is if they open, it's going to open up in limited capacity, and it will allow people who can't afford to keep their kid home to send their kid to school and be in a safer environment. But I just don't see things. I think things like the uh the destination conferences, like the one that you and I, love to go
yeah,
to in Utah, the CS
yeah,
100.
yeah,
I just don't see those things opening up that soon. And once again, it's not because client success and Dave don't want to have that. I think that there's going to
exactly.
be a lot of hesitation from people to get
I
on a plane
agree.
and go talk, go mix with a group of a couple hundred people.
I agree with you 100%. And, I'm going to make another bold statement here about 2021. Customer success, this year has become more crucial in an organization, in, companies than I've ever seen before.
Yep.
The shift of focus from how do we, sell more and bring in more revenue quickly shifted to how do we retain the customers that we have and grow the customers that we have, because there was so much uncertainty in what was going to happen with the economy and, COVID in general. But one of the things I think that we're not thinking about enough is, COVID really hit us March, April here, right? March,
Yeah.
April.
Mid March is when, at least in California, they started shutting things down.
Exactly. And I don't know about you, but my budget was already set for the year. I had the money for, allocated. I've paid for my tools, all of that for 2020, right? 2021 though, that's a different ballgame. I think we're going to see customer success's importance grow even more in 2021.
Yep.
And customer success managers are going to really have to shift. They're not going to be able to rest on their laurels of, the product is so great, they're always going to renew, because I think in 2021, it's not going to matter if the product is great. It's going to really come down to how you have proven ROI, how you can show your customers that you are creating efficiency and saving them money.
Yeah.
Because I think 2021, probably not for all industries, right? Like I'm sure health tech is just like slammed, and ed tech is slammed. But a lot of industries are going to really, and companies are going to have to look at their budgets and say, what can we cut? And you do not want to be the CSM that gets cut again and again and again.
Yeah.
So you have to shift your mindset. Right now, if you are a CSM that is operating thinking, oh, okay, they didn't turn in 2020, we're going to be good. I would take a pause and really look at your portfolio and figure out what's going to happen in 2021 and how you can shift your customer success management style to one that is very partnership oriented, consultative, constantly proving return on investment.
Focus on value realization.
Value realization. Show them for every dollar they spend with you, they get 5 back. I don't know what the measurement is. That would be great. But
usually they say for every dollar they spend, they get $1.05, $1.10, $1.20 back. They're getting more value than they're putting in, right? That's the key.
Exactly.
But your point, that's not something that customers necessarily understand or recognize. So it's the job of the customer success manager to be constantly reminding them about that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, I think it's going to be even more crucial in 2021 that all CSMs are leveling up to that point.
Yep.
I don't think we're there as an industry right yet. As a matter of fact, there was a poll that was put out, and I can't remember who it was that put it out, but asked, like, what is the greatest mistake a CSM can make? I don't know if you saw that. It was kind of interesting. It was on LinkedIn. And it was essentially, is it being slow to reply, doing too much technical support? What was the other option? Being slow to reply, mainly solving technical issues, providing limited onboarding or other. And I was really surprised that the majority of folks wrote being slow to reply. I view that as a core problem with maybe expectations for the CSM.
Yeah.
So fixable. For me, mainly solving technical issues means you're not a CSM.
Yeah, you're a tech support person.
Tech support person. That's exactly what I wrote.
Right.
And I think right now the leaders of customer success, knowing that 2021 could even be harder than 2020, should be looking at all the activities that their customer success managers are doing and make sure that it's not unevenly balanced towards like, oh, they're doing, 70% support work and 30% CSM work. You want to flip that immediately and make sure your teams are out there doing what they can to save your business, to preserve your revenue.
I'm surprised that failure to demonstrate value didn't make that list.
Yeah, it was 100%. I will defend it. It's Ziv.
Ziv Paled. Okay. Yeah. I'll check it out.
I will defend him. I know that you can only have 4 options in these surveys.
Ah,
So, yeah. So it's still fascinating, the comments and stuff that are going on in the
yeah,
thread.
it's hard for me to keep up with all that while I'm building content.
I totally get it.
Yeah, you've got to be flexible. You also got to be, to your point, throughout all of this that we've been talking about, you've got to be flexible,
Yeah.
right? You've got to inject that flexibility in your folks and how they deal with their customers, how you deliver success. We had to pivot very quickly in our business. We've always had an intention of trying to do our trainings virtually, but we had an 18-month roadmap. And when COVID hit, we had 2 weeks. We went from 18 months to 2 weeks,
Wow.
because you can't deliver a 2-day workshop via Zoom. It just doesn't work, and it's exhausting to folks. So we had to adjust, and we had to adjust thinking from the customer's perspective, and we adjusted, and we've luckily been able to capitalize actually on this whole work from home thing, and produce a product that is incredibly valuable to people, that people are very receptive to, and they're getting value out of. So
this is
it's
the
all
time
about it. Pardon?
I was going to say, this is the time when the industry needs folks like you and success hackers and other companies that are doing what you do the most. We need fresh ideas. We need training. We need to really, I keep saying it, but level it up.
Yep. Level it up. Yeah. And this is a great time great opportunity to do it. You have people that don't have to commute anymore, that have more flexible schedules because of working from home. So there's no excuse. No excuse at all.
100%.
It was interesting because right at that beginning, in that March, April timeframe, we had deals that just disappeared in like a day.
Yeah.
But we are definitely starting, to your point, now that customer success, finally, it took a pandemic for people to realize, oh my God, customer success is
really
so important. Yeah. Our businesses, and people are, we're talking to huge companies. They're like, hey, we need you. We get it now. We need your help training our folks, up leveling our folks. So, there's wood behind that arrow. People, it's moved to, it's moved from all, just talk to people actually, companies actually doing something about it, which is good to see.
It's interesting too, because I was talking to a couple other execs recently, and they shared with me, one of them had been at their company for quite a few years. And while they always attended the board meeting, they never talked. Well, welcome to your new reality.
Yeah, exactly.
Because now they are being just drilled by the board.
Of course they are.
Like, what are you doing to keep the revenue, and what's your churn forecast? And
they never talked at the board meeting, man.
I know.
I was always vocal at the board, but I know that's hard for you to imagine me not being vocal. But
of course. But you also have to think, every board is a little different.
Yes, for sure.
And they said also other folks didn't talk.
Yeah.
It wasn't just customer success, but they always want to hear from sales.
Of course they do.
They always want to hear from sales. They always want to hear from marketing, just to make sure, is that funnel strong? What's the numbers like? And now here all of a sudden it's like, okay, sales, sit down. Okay.
Exactly. I want to talk about customer success. I was very fortunate. My first job of building customer success organization, which was, the first one of the first ones outside of Salesforce, as a matter of fact, was at Intact. And I was very fortunate to have on my board, both Byron Dieter from Bessemer, as well as Brian Jacobs from Emergence. I mean, and these are two of the top VCs in SaaS. And one of my first tasks was to stop the churn problem they had. So I felt, looking back, I was incredibly fortunate to be able to work with the team I worked with at Intact, and in particular those venture capitalists who were very much at the bleeding edge of the SaaS business.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always awesome when you can have someone like that in your world early,
Yeah,
because it really shapes how you think about everything.
yeah, very much so, very much so. And with that, Maranda, thank you as always. Great conversation. Love what you have to say. Always an enlightening perspective from you. And I wish you the best. I hope you have a great time next week. You're going to Yosemite. That
No,
sounds. I'm
Utah.
sorry. I'm sorry. Not
Utah.
Yosemite. Utah. You're going to Utah.
Yeah.
That sounds like nice off the grid time
That's
off
the
the grid. This
goal.
would be
That's the
fantastic.
goal. That's the
Excellent.
goal.
Enjoy that. Stay
As long as,
healthy. Stay safe, and enjoy that time.
yeah, as long as my husband and I don't kill each other on the like 11-hour car drive, we'll be good. I'm going to talk radio it up, and he's going to just probably go nuts. I love listening to talk radio. So
Yeah.
gonna
NPR.
NPR or whatever
Yeah.
you give me, as long as it's talk radio. I'll even turn CNN on and play it on my car radio. So yeah, he'll probably be nuts. I would say probably 2 hours in. So
Nice.
it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. I always have a lot of fun talking to you.
Thank you, and hopefully at some point when we get a little closer to normal, we can get together for a socially distant in-person drink.
Yes, let's do it.
All right.
Absolutely. That's
Wonderful.
a plan.
All right.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Thank you.